Hi, Student Success. This is your Chapter 1 lecture video. So I do want to show you, since this is your first one, I am in the Week 1 folder. I come into here and I expand my materials folder. There we go. I expand it, and then you can see that I have some resources here that is going to help me with Chapter 1. My Chapter 1 textbook link will take me right to Chapter 1. And then I also have Chapter 1 slides. I will tell you right now that this is 47 slides. Feel free to take a look at these. I will not be going through all of these slides because I think if anything, they're just kind of a complement or a supplement to the textbook chapter itself. And so feel free to take a look through here because it certainly condenses some of the content from your chapter into the slide format, but I do not expect you to both pay a lot of detail to the slides and the text. But I am going to go ahead and go through the chapter lecture and just kind of let you know and pull out some things, walk you through how it's set up so you know what to expect with future chapters. So as I'm looking at Chapter 1, every chapter will start off with like a pre-assessment, kind of knowing where you are currently with whatever the concepts from that chapter are. So this one's kind of talking about, just like your college experience for the most part. This is completely voluntary. It's informal. It's just like a real quick, you can look through and say like, yes, I'm sure, no. And then you can return to it to kind of reassess to see based on after the chapter, after the lecture, do you feel more confident or comfortable in any of these areas? This is a place to goal set. So if you wanted to set some goals on all of the different lists, it says circle the 3 most important areas that you kind of want to improve upon. Again, this is informal, not mandatory. It's just for your own kind of self-reflection and check-in. This is what's going to show you like, hey, this is what this chapter is going to focus on. So it's letting you know what you're about to see. And here we jump into the actual chapter. All right, so the first little section of the chapter is like saying, hey, you're here. Congratulations. It may or may not be your decision, but hopefully for the majority of you, it was your choice to come to college, not just like a default or you were kind of expected or mandated to come here. But most colleges do require a course like the one you're taking right now, an orientation course, a student success course. They may call it something different, but all undergrad programs have something very similar to this. When students come to college, these type of classes are to help you understand all the ways that you can be successful as a student. Success meaning, like getting through and reaching your own goals, not success as in straight A's, because that's not attainable or realistic for every student or even something that some students care about. It's trying to get you through your degree program to reach your overall goal. Something else that is really important to note is that going to college is not just about your degree and the money that you can potentially make. There are different benefits to college education, and that's what they talk about right here. In general, having an education, a degree, even if you don't finish that degree, so even if you only go for like a semester or two, college has a lot of benefits. You are seeing different perspectives, you're around different people, you have maybe bigger picture understanding of how different processes and some things in the world work. And we're connected to other people. So lots of other benefits to attending college. However, some students do not do well in their first year because there's a lot of obstacles. And so a course and a book like this are designed to hopefully help you navigate when some of those obstacles come up that are able to be navigated, because we know sometimes things happen. It's just like, health issues or transportation or housing, whatever. Sometimes those take a little longer to solve. But if we can help you navigate through a lot of common issues students have in their first year, such as learning to balance all of their priorities, financial management, time management, all of those things, then that is what the goal of, our course will be. All right. So now getting into kind of the meat of the chapter, who are you? This is going to, again, kind of the theme with the beginning, take some time to take stock of who you are. What are your goals? And there's a little planning activity right here. What is your college plan? And again, this is just informal. You do not have to do it, but you can certainly think about it. How long do you plan on being here? A 2-year degree does not always take 2 years. It usually actually takes 3.5 on average. What is going to be difficult for you? How many courses do you have to take? So just kind of thinking about, all right, what am I doing? What's my plan here? Then you want to think about your values. What values do you hold? Do those align with the career path you think you're headed? Do you have to put any values on hold for now? And if you're not decided, let's say you're having a hard time thinking of your path that you want to follow, because some of you may be CCP, you're still in high school, or some of you are fresh out of high school. You can always do this like real quick little activity where it's trying to have you kind of rank your values to see what is important to you, because it is not 100% necessary, but it's pretty important to have your values align with the career you go into. For instance, I had a student one semester say that she was going into nursing, but she did not really value interpersonal communication or connection. Like, she essentially did not like people. Like, that's probably a conflict of values and career, and that's going to lead to some unhappiness. So career satisfaction is greatly tied to values and what you think is important. So there's a little kind of check-in with your values to see what your values are. And that could always also help you think of like career direction, which leads us to the next part, thinking about your major and your career. So some of you have already selected your major. Some of you are still kind of thinking about it, but the goal is obviously to hopefully figure it out within your first semester or two, where you want to go, but it's also very common to change majors. So don't think that like, oh my gosh, my whole family is teachers, I have to be a teacher, I'm going into teaching, and then you get into your teaching classes and you're like, this is not for me at all. That's totally okay to change your major. Oftentimes, a lot of your prereqs will transfer from major to major at the, those very early stages. So you won't have lost too much time and money, but a lot of students almost feel like they have to be locked in. You can still certainly change your major. So this section goes through talking about, really reflecting on your interests, your values, your strengths, your personality, and how you can really align those with the career that you're going into. And so they do talk about a couple assessments you can take to see what kind of values you have and where that aligns with a career path. But I also want to show you, I'm just going to go to the Sark State homepage here. I'm going to go info for it's cutting off because I did this. Hold on, let's do that. There we go. Current students. And we're going to come over here and we're going to career services. We have a whole office on campus that is dedicated to helping students with their career, which is what you all are here for. Probably 99% of you. There might be some of you kind of coming back to maybe freshen up a skill for a career that you're already in, but Career Services is a great resource to help you from any step of the process. Let's say you're undecided all the way through, hey, I'm ready to graduate, and then even after when you're an alumni. So there's some resources over here to help you with interviewing. This career coach is an inventory to help you see what career is a good fit for you. There's Handshake. And then there's also some information on, what kind of appointments they make and how they sit down and work with you. Here's some contact information over here. And then some events they'll have posted, things that are coming out this semester. If you wanted to attend a workshop, there's some survey results. So lots of good information there. I always like to point that out whenever we talk about this. So if you were kind of still thinking about your career, I encourage you to look at Career Services. You also want to take into consideration as you're thinking about your first year in college and, a little bit about your career path is your past educational experiences. And sometimes for a lot of students, their past education is high school. And so thinking about high school or the last college class you took, how did you do with certain things, time management, attendance, learning styles, personal life, and all of that. This is kind of a list saying like how high school is a little different than college, because yes, you have more freedom, but there's also different expectations and different kind of ways to navigate the educational process. And so whenever some students come right from high school to college, they find that difficult to balance and navigate. They have to do a lot of adjusting. So you really want to make sure that you're thinking about how you can adjust your mindset if you're coming right out of high school to college, or if you've been out of college or school for a long time, how can you get back in the swing of things? This section talks about liking yourself as a student and just knowing who you are as a student and how you can approach different classes, your attitude with learning. I know when I taught in the K through 12 sector, I always talked about like attitude is such a big thing. It makes such a huge difference in your overall learning. And that still as an adult, our attitude really shapes how we take in information and how we study it. And so this kind of talks a little bit about some of the chapters where you'll talk about, how you are as a student. So staying motivated or dealing with whenever we come up against obstacles. Under here, some information about self-management, some tips about how to make sure that you are on topic, on task. So making sure that you know, like, hey, I'm responsible for my actions now. I don't have a teacher who's going to call home and make sure that I'm doing my work. You know, realize that you have the ability to change some habits that might have not been so great in the past. And then there's a little section that has key takeaways from this section. That was just section 1.1 and a little bit of exercises after that. And again, those are all just informal, up to you. Section 1.2 then starts talking about, hey, college is a place where we start learning and interacting with ideas and people that are brand new to us. And so how are we going to kind of respond to that? This section talks about the difference of the types of students. So you might hear, and I actually use this quite a lot, like traditional student, non-traditional student. Traditional is, it's very term that describes students who you've already attended high school, you've graduated high school, or you have your GED, your high school equivalent, and you're in college now. You're called a traditional student. A non-traditional student may refer to someone who is, and they go into a little bit more detail here. You know, so here's a traditional. Non-traditional might be those students who you've been out of school for a long time. So maybe you're a little bit more wise. So you're coming back to us after many years in a field, and either you're changing career fields or you just want to learn more about the career you're going into to make more money. Or you're a CCP student, so you're a little bit more non-traditional. So this kind of walks you through what traditional means. Returning students, this is another way of like the non-traditional. They're a little older, they're coming back. And sometimes these students are a little bit more focused and serious because they know more about the world and they know real information about money and time and things like that. And so we often see our returning or our non-traditional students as more focused in a lot of ways for that reason. Then you have some other student groups. Everyone on our campus is considered a commuter student because we don't have dormitories here. We do have a lot of first generation students, which means you are the first one in your family to attend college. We have a lot of students who are international. They come here from I've had students from Nepal, Russia, Mexico. It's really cool to see all these students in all these different places. We have a lot of students who have academic needs, you know, students with disabilities. Most of our students are working minimum part-time. We have a lot of students who they're raising a family. So we have a lot of backgrounds with our students. Here is some information about like what a successful student may look like, all of these different concepts and what chapter it's located in. So we're going to see all of these different things kind of sprinkled throughout the book, how we can be successful as a student. All right, moving on to a next section here, talking about learning styles, how you learn. So this chapter says there are 4 steps to learning. We want to prepare to learn, absorb, capture, and review. And so I'm just going to kind of walk through it real quickly. As I mentioned in my welcome video to every semester, I want you to focus on the sections of each chapter that you need the most help or interest so that you are getting the most out of the book as you are able to. All right, so when we are doing this learning cycle, prepare means you're taking time to get ready. You've looked at the syllabus, you know what's coming up, you know what reading has to be done, you've done the reading before class, you have your materials, you're early to class, like all of these things. That's how a prepared student starts this learning cycle. Absorbing is kind of what it sounds like. You're the actual learning of the information. And so you're actively listening, you're taking notes, you're putting things in your own words, you're summarizing after class. Capturing then is really that note-taking process. You're really focusing in on how to get the information from your short-term to your long-term memory. And so that might look like Cornell notes, mapping, audio recording, lectures. And then finally spending some time going back over because we forget things we don't review. So we really want to make sure we spend some time after class within 24 hours looking at our notes and making sure we're comfortable with the information. Now, learning style, I'm not sure how many of you in here have ever taken a learning style survey before. You know, every teacher has their own teaching style, and sometimes that matches up with your learning style, and sometimes it doesn't. But you also need to be familiar with their learning style, and so I do want to show you bark-learn.com. If you've ever taken a learning style survey, this is a pretty quick and easy one, so I like to use this. If you come here and then it's like a little bit info. There's a lot of, I'm gonna go here. the questionnaire. When you get here, it's going to ask you a series of scenarios and what you would do in each scenario. And so I would recommend checking 1, no more than 2 for each scenario, like what you would do. You'll answer all the questions, you'll get down to the bottom and you'll hit get results, and it is going to give you one of your learning styles. I'm just going to kind of skip to this part. It's going to walk you through hey, you're a verbal learner, you're an auditory learner, you're a read-write learner, visual. So it's going to tell you what kind of learner you are, and then it's going to give you some tips. I'm sorry, it does have a lot of ads. It's going to give you some tips on those different ones. And there's a lot of other resources here if you're interested, but I do like to at least show you VARK. I encourage you to take it if you've never taken a learning style survey before, because then at the end, of the assessment, and here's a couple more like rhythmic, it can help you kind of know where to invest your time and energy, both inside and outside the classroom. And so if you know that you are a visual learner, for instance, you may not have to take a lot of notes. You may be more interested in the PowerPoints, the videos, and you only jot down a few notes, versus if you're a read-write learner, if you're verbal, you're going to take a lot of notes. So it's just helpful to kind of know, and it's going to give you, over here, it's going to give you ways to study and how to go about that process. And it talks about VARK right here as well. All right, so that's all about learning style. Under here, it talks about reading. Reading is so important at the college level. Oftentimes, students skip out on reading. Hey, you have to read chapter 3 for class next week, and students will either skim it or not do it at all. But it's really important to engage in the reading process to be able to learn something like 80% of what we learn, according to the College Reading Learning Association. 80% of what we learn in college is done through reading. Especially you think about if you're taking an online class, it's all you. You are taking the information in. And so it's really helpful to make sure you have solid reading strategies. And there's a chapter in our textbook that talks specifically about reading strategies. So this is just kind of going through some very general tips and how to approach that. The same with listening. Listening is extremely important in college. Active listening, not just passive listening. And so there is a chapter, the same one that we'll be talking about with reading, that talks about active listening. And here again, some general tips about some ways that you can be a better listener, although that chapter 4 will get into more detail. Seeing, doing, feeling. So again, this is going to walk you through ways that you can have just general tips to help you best with your learning. So I encourage you to take the VARK questionnaire, or if you already know what kind of learner you are, look to see if there's some tips in here that could help you in this area. Underneath that, it's going to talk about your style versus your instructor's style. Now, just like everyone has a learning style, every teacher has their own teaching style, and sometimes it aligns and sometimes it doesn't. And so we do have to be adaptable. So if you can, if you're multimodal in particular, you can maybe rely upon your visual strategy in one class and your auditory in another. Multimodal just means that you have strengths in many areas of the learning process. And there's takeaways, checkpoint, and then we're kind of starting to get toward the end of the chapter. What is college? It's going to talk to you a little bit about, hey, depending on where you go, obviously at Stark, we're going to have a little bit smaller classes. But if you go to a bigger institution, you may be looking at sitting in a room with 100 to 200 other students. So making sure that you're picking classes and settings that are going to be beneficial to you based on the learning style. Be familiar with the classes you have to take. The class you guys are taking right now, that you're in right now, this is a prerequisite. So it means it's a course you have to take before moving on to other courses. It is not a career focused course, but it's undergrad students have to take these type of classes regardless. And so this is just going to talk to you about the different types of classes. Of course, we're in an online class right now, so this is relevant to us sitting here. So we have online classes. This is a Web3 course, which means we do not meet face-to-face or at the same time, but this is just some general tips on how to kind of navigate your online courses. The biggest thing I tell my students is that you have to be really self-managed. You have to log in early, be on top of your assignments, and manage not only your time, but your motivation and your energy. Class attendance and promptness, how important it is. Now, every instructor is going to have their own policies that relates to that, so just make sure you check your syllabus. College policies as well on your syllabus. You want to make sure you review and know the college policies and expectations. College resources. I also, again, under info for current students. I encourage you to look at this website, this page, and really look to see all the things we have to offer. They're free. Not really because your tuition covers it, but they're free to use. Like, you don't have to go and pay to use any of these resources. Your tuition already has it, wrapped up there. So, but take advantage. No one can get a degree completely by themselves. At one point, you're going to need tutoring or career services or the digital library, something. I have multiple degrees and I've never gone without asking for sometimes a lot of help, because we need that. We need a lot of help. It's always better to ask questions and use resources. But here are some examples of resources that many colleges tend to have. Every college is a little different, obviously, but that's why I encourage you to look at our page to know what we have. All right, let me here. All right, let's talk about success. So again, this is kind of looking to see what it is that can make us successful. And I know success is always defined a little differently, depend on who we are. And this is what this says, that success means different things depending on what your goals are. But you want to make sure that you are doing the best you can, because you are spending a lot of time and money. So whether that means to you, like, I need to get a certain GPA, or I just need to gain a certain amount of information, you want to make sure that you're setting those goals and then working toward those goals. How much do grades matter? Again, it kind of depends on the field that you're going into. You'll hear some people say, D's get degrees, or like if you're going into a field that you have a GPA requirement, then grades really do matter quite a bit. So it's the other thing. You want to know your field you're going into. Is it going to require a GPA that you have to get into the program or to graduate? So you want to be aware of all of those type of things. This is a little information on how to calculate your GPA. There's a lot of GPA calculators out there talking about if you can challenge a grade. And this is just in general succeeding in your first year. For some of you, this is your very first semester. Some of you might be your second or third, but some ways that you can really get off on the right foot, so you're not making mistakes or doing something wrong early on that's difficult to fix later. So this is gonna things like, hey, really have some confidence in yourself. Sometimes it's really hard. There's imposter syndrome, there's self-doubt, but if you can even fake the confidence, it's going to help you out. Meet with your advisor, introduce yourself to your instructors, participate in class. Even if you're not a big question asker or answer, email or just at least nod your head, show participation somehow. Those some key takeaways, checkpoint exercises again, and then this is just some chapter activities, again, not mandatory, and a quick review. So all of your chapters are going to be set up just this same way. It's going to have all these different sections and some kind of voluntary exercises. How much you do is up to you, but I, once again, want to encourage you, even if you look at the table of contents, every chapter, go in and spend time on the sections that you need the most attention to, or you don't know much about, or you think would be most beneficial. All right, I'll see you in our next lecture video.